Mr. Stephen A. Smith, uber popular talk show host, executive producer, and sometimes soap star. You can see him making appearances on General Hospital. He's out with a brand new New York Times best-selling book called Straight Shooter, a memoir of second chances and first takes. Obviously, you can catch him on ESPN talking sports, but he's been showing up on some political shows on cable news, talking a whole lot about politics. And I read an article where he had been encouraged to run for political office, maybe senator from the great state of Pennsylvania, to which he responded, wouldn't make a good senator, but maybe president, but maybe not. All right, Stephen A. Hey, how you doing?
How you doing, Areva? How's everything going? I'm on the other side now. I'm on the other side. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah. All right. I'm calling this the rematch because when I was on your show, you insisted that there would be no way that Donald Trump could not debate Kamala Harris. I was adamant that he was scared, unlikely to do it. Let me play that clip of you and I going back and forth about this whole issue of debating Trump and Harris.
Because Donald Trump can't get away with it. He can't get away with talking. First of all, he said to Joe Biden, hold on, wait a minute. He said to Joe Biden, I want to debate him 5 times. Remember that? You can't go from wanting to debate the president, the incumbent, who's obviously running for re-election, daring him to debate you 5 times to bowing out and not debating the VP once. He can't get away with that. There's a lot of things Donald Trump has gotten away with. He ain't getting away with that.
I'm not going to put money on it because All right, Stephen A., you said he cannot get away with it. And as of today, Donald Trump has canceled the ABC scheduled debate, September 10th, says he's not showing up, and basically said, Kamala Harris, I'm not going to debate you. Came up with some flimsy thing like, I'll do it on Fox before an audience with people I get to choose. But she knew this strong Black woman was not going to let him push her around. So you want to apologize to me now or later?
Absolutely not. First of all, I'm right. He will end up debating. He can run, but he can't hide. That's number one. Number two, that's not the real clip you should have been playing. The real clip you should have been playing, Areva, is when you swore up and down that there was no way on earth that Kamala Harris should be running for president because it is too late in the game. Biden cannot drop out. It's going to be death for the Democrats. If that happens, it's just too late. The 50 delegates in each state and all of the stuff that has to happen before the convention. I said none of that matters. The man there has been slippage. We appreciate the job that he has done, but there's absolutely positively nothing wrong with saying, okay, my time is up. I've got a viable candidate here that's the vice president. You contribute to the Biden and Harris campaign, not just the Biden campaign. She could step up in there and make some noise. And what has she done? She has stepped up in there. You've generated over $300 million. Okay. She's gaining traction, all of that. So when are you going to admit, Stephen, you were right?
Well, first of all, Stephen, you telling me what I should do on my show. Now, when I come on your show, I don't sit there and tell you, don't play that clip. Don't do that. I respect you as the host. So can you just give me a little respect that I know what I'm doing?
I have profound respect for you.
And when I come back to New York and I sit next to you on your stage next to you, you can play whatever you want to play. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. But today, on the Areva Martin in Real Time show, we're talking about what Areva Martin wants to talk about.
Okay.
And I was right then. And let's go back to your comment about the debate. Okay. Your dude, and I know you're going to tell me he ain't your dude. The dude is not going to debate. He did not.
I think he will. In all seriousness,
doing the Republican primary.
Right.
And he's not going to debate her because you don't get to tell the other candidate on the other side, on the other ticket.
Posturing, Areva.
He's not posturing. He's posturing so he doesn't have to do it, Stephen.
May I answer? He's not going to get away with avoiding a debate with Kamala Harris. He has to debate her. It's posturing. He will cave. He will relent. He will give in, and they will have at least 2 debates. up against one another in the aftermath of the Democratic convention in Chicago later on this month. It will happen. Not only that, I think when you've heard what he's had to say about the selection of Tim Walz as the vice presidential candidate, the presumptive vice presidential nominee, and he's talking about how far left he leans, it feeds into the argument. I actually think Donald Trump believes that he could beat Kamala Harris in a debate. I think he'll find out otherwise, but I think he thinks he can beat her. And I think her choice for VP buffers his position in that regard. I think they're gearing and getting ready to settle for a date as to when they're going to debate. I think it's going to happen.
You are the only person that thinks that Donald Trump is getting ready to debate Kamala Harris. What we do know, to be factual, is Kamala Harris is committed to showing up on September 10th, the date that was selected for the first presidential debate, or the second one, I guess we call the June, the first one, to show up at the ABC studios on September 10th, debate Donald Trump if he had the guts to show up, or speak to the American people, talk about what she plans to do as president, and until there's some evidence that Donald Trump is going to do something to the contrary, because she's not showing up on his terms as he has indicated. And we're going to play your tape when he comes up with 1,200 more excuses as to why he is not going to debate her. And wait a minute, let's go to your Tim Walz. Tim Walz, contrary to Donald Trump's attack on him, has proven himself capable of bringing not just Democrats together in the state, but independents and Republicans. He's been out getting the votes in the state of Minnesota of rural white voters, some of the same rural white voters that defected from the Democratic Party and have been voting for Donald Trump. So if anything, Walz probably gives Donald Trump even more pause and more reasons not to show up at a debate.
I completely disagree with that. Totally, 1,000%. Okay. And there's a couple of reasons why. First of all, let's understand something here. We could say what we want about Donald Trump, and we probably have very similar feelings about him. But the one thing that we can't deny is that showing up for a debate is the least of this man's problems. If you consider what has been transpiring over the years.
Let me just stop you. I'm going to let you finish your point. I'll give you ample time.
You're not letting me speak.
I got to stop you right there.
More, but go ahead.
If you said showing up at a debate is the least of his worries, why won't he show up on September 10th?
Well, I don't know. Well, September 10th is not here yet. So let's not rule that out. That's number one. Number two, I think it's important to point. What I was getting to was this. When you've been impeached twice, when you've got the insurrection January 6th, when you've got 34 felony counts against you, indictments that ultimately you were found guilty of. I mean, when you consider the fact that he's endured what he's had to endure, that's all I mean by when I say showing up to a debate. Like, what's going to happen to him? Yeah, what's going to happen to them? Okay, she may have very, very good points against him. Who hasn't had good points against him when they bring up his legal issues and what have you? It still doesn't stop him from looking into the cameras in a straight face and calling everybody a liar, acting like when it's raining, you spin somebody's face and saying it's raining. It doesn't stop him. So I'm saying when you have that kind of gall, when you have that kind of nerve, it's hard for me to imagine that he's going to be fazed by the notion of showing up in a debate against you. Now, when we get to Tim Walz, let's say this.
But okay, we're going to get to Tim Walz, but let me respond to that and tell you why your points are so incorrect. Okay. What we know about Donald Trump is that he is terrified by Black women. The 34 felony counts, the $450 million civil judgment against him, the 80, the judgments, the case against him in Georgia, all Black women prosecutors. And yes, to your point, it's not like he goes to jail if he loses a debate. It's not like he loses his personal privileges, but he does get publicly humiliated by a Black woman. And for a narcissist, like Donald Trump, public humiliation, particularly by a smart Black woman, the death knell to a narcissist.
Why do you have to bring up Black women like they're the only ones that could humiliate him? There's a whole bunch of cases against him.
Because Kamala Harris happens to be a Black woman.
I'm saying, but there's a whole bunch of people against him. So I'm just saying the same thing that you're saying he's fearful of in terms of transpiring when faced against the black women. You could sit up there and say that against white women because of Roe v. Wade. You could sit up there and say that about Latinos because of his position on immigration. You could sit up there and say a lot of different things about him. I mean, every way he turns, you're going to have somebody that has a legitimate beef with him. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm thinking, okay, this is what's par for the course for you. You deal with this every day. We have watched this man literally go through criminal and civil cases, and he has sat there with a straight face. You're all wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. Facts staring him in the face. I don't know what you're talking about. And listen, he goes up to the NABJ last week in Chicago. You know, Rachel Scott asked him a very poignant question, rife with facts about things that he has said, folks he has alienated, and what does he do? I can't believe I've been asked such a horrible question. You didn't even say hello. How are you? I mean, this is what he does. So when you look at it,
let's be clear what he does.
It's what he does.
What he does is make outlandish and outrageous, provocative statements so that he can win the day in the media. So he does that, and he does not. And all your hypotheticals about
consecutive GOP nominations.
I let you talk, so you must give the host the respect that I deserve. So be quiet for a minute. Be quiet for a minute. These are not hypotheticals. The reality is Kamala Harris is a black woman. So we have to talk about the hypothetical people that might intimidate him, might humiliate him, because we already know right now Kamala Harris is the official nominee for president on the Democratic ticket, and he does not want to face her, because if he did, he would show up on September 10th. He wouldn't backpedal on September 10th is around the corner. If you are so anxious
I'm looking at today's day. I'm just looking at my phone.
Hold on. If you are so anxious to prosecute your case, you had a date, you had a time, you didn't live up to your promise. You don't know. And contrary to your point about bringing it towards Kamala Harris, the campaign is flailing. They don't know how to deal with a campaign with Kamala Harris. As much as he talked about Joe Biden and his age, the reality is they are throwing spaghetti up against the wall, hoping that something will stick. And so far, nothing is sticking, which is why the polls right now today show Kamala Harris up 3 percentage points in a myriad of polls across some key battleground states. Let's talk about Tim Walz.
I love how you bring up the polls with me now, but you ignored when I brought up the polls with you a month ago. The polls didn't matter then. It didn't matter at all.
Stop trying to bring up the receipt. I want your response. What did you, Tim Walz? I'm thinking Stephen A is going to love him. He's a former coach. He coached kids. He's a sports dude. He owns a gun. He's like a sharpshooter. Isn't he the kind of guy you would like?
I don't mind him. I would tell you that, listen, I think that helps you in Minnesota, but that's not a swing state. They haven't voted for Republicans since 1976. I would tell you that when you look at what he brings to the table, really good dude by all accounts, smart, obviously served this country. Obviously has a sports background, like you said, as a former high school football coach, served in the military, has served this country. There are people that complain about Minnesota being one of those high tax states. They think about some of his liberal policies. They bring that to the table. I'm not even questioning any of that. My only question is what made him better for Kamala Harris than Shapiro in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a swing state. He is a Jewish individual. Obviously, he's highly intelligent, very accomplished, viewed very favorably in a swing state like the state of Pennsylvania. Had the Trump campaign supposedly shaking in their boots at the thought of him being in that seat, no question about it. And obviously, they couldn't go against him for so much because even though he has the support of the Jewish community, but he was deemed as somebody who said something along the way that was deemed pro-Palestinian in some people's eyes. The fact of the matter is, it was nothing compared to the Republicans and how they were pro-Israel as opposed to pro-Palestinian in any way. And so he didn't have that to worry about. And if I'm not saying you know, because I know you know the history, but Hillary lost in 2016 in Pennsylvania. Biden won in 2020 in Pennsylvania. But it's obviously an incredibly important swing state. And if you get that, that will go a long way. So my attitude is watching Shapiro speak, watching how vibrant of a speaker he is, watching the fervor surrounding him and what he brings to the table and the importance of the state of Pennsylvania. I'm looking at Walz and I'm saying, okay, is he going to get you Michigan? Is he going to get you Wisconsin?
Hold on. The Midwest is in play, Wisconsin and Michigan because of Walz. And here's the baggage. Josh Shapiro had baggage. He's all those things. He had a lot of swagger, got a lot of charisma, and obviously well-liked enough to be the governor of the state of Pennsylvania. But vice presidents aren't always from swing states. Kamala Harris, California is not a swing state. Delaware wasn't a swing state when Joe Biden picked him. But you're looking for more than, if the person is from a swing state. And if Josh Shapiro is as bad as you just defined him to be, he should still be able to deliver Pennsylvania for the president. And the reality is there are young voters in the Midwest. There are young voters across this country who have issues with Josh Shapiro, and that had to be weighed. And then there's this whole thing called, do we get along? Your vice president is like somebody you're going to marry. So you have to have personalities that mesh well together. And you could tell the chemistry that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz had. I met Tim Walz. Tim Walz is the most relatable, likable kind of guy, and you need that on a campaign. And he's a bulldog. He's a bulldog, just like Josh Shapiro, a little different in his attitude, but the Midwest is critical to this election. The world seems to be your oyster, Mr. Stephen A. Smith, and you're showing up in a lot of places where folks who do politics, like cable news, show up. And, has people thinking, are you interested in politics, given any thought to politics? And more importantly, I have to ask you, obviously people know you, they love you because of your sports takes. But when you do these political shows, when you're on with Chris Cuomo, you're on with Abby Phillips on CNN, how are you fact checking? Because there's so much fake information and bad information out there. And I know in the sports world, my friends tell me, boy, if they want it straight, they listen to you. Should they do the same when you're talking politics, though? Are you checking your facts as carefully around politics as you do around sports?
Absolutely. Even more so because I'm talking about people's lives, including my own. And primarily when I'm talking about politics, I'm giving perspective as opposed to trying to debate facts. I have my own researchers, just like you do in the world of sports. So you make sure your I's are dotted and T's are crossed. But in the same breath, if I'm talking to Areva Martin, if I'm talking to Chris Cuomo, if I'm talking to Sean Hannity or anybody else, I make sure that I'm deferential to some degree because it's what y'all do for a living, as opposed to somebody like me who's just an avid observer and a conscientious observer at that. That's what I pride myself on being. I give you my perspective based on the information that I know. And I'm very honest when I don't know anything. And I think you know that about me. If I don't know something, I don't pretend to know. I'll give you my perspective about something. But when it comes to facts, I'm quick to sit up there and say, I don't know. This is what I've read. This is what I've heard. And I'll even ask and play and be deferential to political aficionados because I'm very, very respectful of the industry itself. As it pertains to me running for office, hell no. I have no interest in doing that whatsoever. I like my life. And the only position that I would consider, to be quite honest with you, is president. I wouldn't want to be one of 435 representatives. I wouldn't want to be one of 100 senators. I wouldn't want to have to go through that forest of nonsense as far as I'm concerned to deal with it. Not to say that as president, you wouldn't have to go through that because you'd have to curry favor with a lot of people. And I'm not the greatest at shaking hands and kissing babies. I love kids. I love kids to death, but I ain't the greatest at the shaking hands and kissing babies campaign kind of thing.
Politics, they call it. That's
it's not who I am. It's not who I am. There are people that have approached me, asked me if it's something I would consider. I told them, hell no, I'm not qualified. But more importantly, I'm not that interested. People would have to come to me and I'd have to damn near be able to avoid campaigning, for crying out loud, in order to be interested in doing it, because I just don't want that headache. I don't need that in my life. But I think about it, and I'll bring up sports because I think it's very important where my interest emanates from. I grew up watching Peter Jennings. I grew up watching Ted Koppel on Nightline. I grew up watching 60 Minutes with Ed Bradley and Mike Wallace and those guys growing up and stuff like that. It was something that I always watched. Tim Russert on Meet the Press and stuff like that. And I always had an affinity for politics. But one of the biggest reasons I had an affinity for it, Areva, is that I've always been appalled at the standard professional athletes were held to.
Mm-hmm.
You're 19, you're 20, you're 21 years of age, and they say you're supposed to be a role model, and you're supposed to act this way, and you're not supposed to do this, and you're not supposed to do that. And you literally had grown adults, parents, leaders, executives, etc., co-signing, holding little kids, and I don't mean little kids literally, but basically youngsters to a level of accountability we didn't attach to politicians. Last time I checked, politicians are the ones that draw up legislation, they implement legislation, they put forth things that directly affect our lives, education, healthcare, immigration, the economy, the list goes on and on. How dare you come to us and get and coax a society into holding people accountable that are in their 20s and young and early 30s, and all they're doing is bouncing a basketball or catching a touchdown pass or hitting a home run or playing hockey or tennis or whatever. It always appalled me. So my inspiration was finding myself in a position where I could have a voice, where I could contribute, albeit in a very small way, in holding people accountable who should be held accountable, which are politicians out there that literally campaign to legislate our lives and get the attention to some degree away from people who are not doing that to us at all. They're just playing a game.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because the comments that J.D. Vance made about, the superstar that we've been watching in these Olympic Games, Simone Biles. We know that Simone had to pull out of the Tokyo Games 4 years ago. She had those twisties as she was doing her routine. Most people called her a hero for being willing to confront her, what I'll call her demons, deal with her mental health issues, take it on, become a champion around mental health issues. J.D. Vance, the VP choice for Donald Trump, was so critical of her, basically said, why are we praising someone who quit? Why are we praising someone that didn't, go the distance and win a medal? So, people were so appalled by that statement. It's like Donald Trump's statement about John McCain, like, I like soldiers who don't get caught, because he was a prisoner of war. I'm with you on that. I don't think we should be holding athletes accountable, even though I give Simone Biles so much respect and so much credit for raising the issue of mental health. I have two daughters who were training to be professional tennis players, so I watched the kind of pressure that young girls, young people, guys included, are under, and how easy it is for them to develop depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. And then, to have to compete at that level and to be criticized because you withdrew from a game that this girl obviously loved and dedicated her entire life to, that speaks volumes about how unqualified someone like J.D. Vance is to be in office if he can't recognize what heroic thing Simone Biles did. I want to ask you, though, about the Olympics. Snoop and Martha Stewart. What's your take on that? Are you enjoying them?
I've always loved it. I'm friends with Snoop. Snoop and I go back decades. I got a lot of love for my brother, really proud of him and how he's evolved over the years. He's just a timeless figure, and he's phenomenal at what he does. And whenever he walks into a room, he's a magnet. He draws that level of attention. And him and Martha Stewart have been collaborating on several projects over the years. He considers her a friend. She's obviously phenomenal at what she's done, or what she's been able to do. Both of them have had their troubles over the years, but nevertheless, I'm talking about separately as individuals, just in their younger years in life, but they've learned from them. They've come out better for it. And I think they personify the American dream and what we ultimately hope America can ultimately be. When you see this young black dude from the hood, and he comes from an entirely different background than a Martha Stewart, but they can collab and have love for one another and work together and view each other as equals. When we think about the American dream, that's what we're talking about here. They're both successful, but they're successful because they work together, they collaborate together, and they look out for one another in the process. And if you really, really think about it, isn't that what we all want for our lives? Isn't that what we all want for our communities and what we all want for this nation? That's hopefully a place that we'll be able to get to, but unfortunately, far more often than not, that's not the case. So props to Snoop and Martha Stewart for being able to capture what they've been able to capture together.
Yeah, they definitely are spicing up the Olympics. I know you talk a lot on your podcast about pop culture. So
Yes.
Megan, what do you make of this critique of Megan Thee Stallion when she went to Atlanta and opened up for Kamala Harris, one of the big rallies, 12,000 people in this arena. Folks criticized Megan for what she had on. They criticized her for saying, the hotties for Harris. They criticized the song that she sang, the dance that she did. And, she's been clapping back on people at this concert she's doing in Chicago. But what did you make of some of the critique towards Megan?
Well, I thought it was excessive. I think that she's an artist, and this is what got her to where she is doing the things that she does as a performer. And so when you call upon her, you kind of know what you're getting, whether you like it or not. And so a lot of people, millions upon millions of people like it. Some others don't. Everybody's got their flavor. Everybody's got their taste. So I take no issue with Megan Thee Stallion whatsoever.
But do you think for a candidate, like
that's where
somebody's
I was going.
running for president,
That's
Kamala Harris, should she be on stage with Megan, beautiful Megan, twerking, singing her songs?
That's where I was going. I have no issue with Megan. I have an issue with Kamala Harris over that, because my point is that you're the vice president of the United States of America, and you set a standard. You don't follow it. And being this marvelous Black woman who's achieved so much in her life and what have you, you have to think about the kind of imagery. I'm not throwing any shade on Megan Thee Stallion whatsoever, but more often than not, that kind of criticism, albeit it may pale in comparison to the applause, there's going to be a certain level, a significant amount of criticism that's going to come your way because of the environment she's in. Yes, she was performing, but in the same breath, where were you performing and what was the reason behind that? It wasn't some typical concert. This woman, who is going to be on the verge of being the first Black woman to be elected as president of the United States of America, there's a standard that comes with that, and that you have people that have expectations that they should be higher. Now, certainly, Vice President Harris is trying to ingratiate herself with the community and what have you, and I get that part. But the point is, you don't have to. You don't have to.
But wait a minute, Stephen. Is this a double standard? What's wrong with Vice President Harris being on a stage with Megan Thee Stallion, a successful rap artist, particularly since we criticize young people for not being engaged in politics, for not being civically engaged? We want to bring them into the party. We want them to care about politics. We want them to vote. So we've got to speak their language. We have to meet people where they are.
Fair.
And have we become, the police around everything in this country? So now, is she the morality police? She has every right to be on a stage with Megan, just like she could be on the stage with Stevie Wonder or anyone.
Well, that's where we get the argument confused. Nobody's questioning her right to do it. Of course, she has the right to do it. What you're asking yourself is, in an effort to curry votes, is that the way to go about it? She might be right. It might end up being right. But the point is, it's similar. Here's what I would like you to think about. I would like you to think about an interview that former President Barack Obama did when he was president. And there were people that was, going on and conversing and going back and forth about how, the young men out here in the streets, they needed to pull up their pants and stuff like that, stop walking around with their hands hanging below their backside and all this other stuff.
This is what Obama said in his interview.
Right. And so Obama was talking about that. And he was coming to their defense, talking about culture, talking about how it shouldn't be absorbed so seriously, how you shouldn't use that as an excuse to paint these individuals in a negative light. Don't judge a book by their racially profiling. Don't judge a book by its cover, et cetera, et cetera. And he was right about all of that. And it was a very thoughtful statement. And then he ended it by saying, having said that, pull your pants up, fellas. Pull your pants up. So in other words, he's saying that, I get it. I'm here for you. I'm defending you, but be mindful of the fact that that may not be the wisest thing to do. That's all we're saying here. We're not criticizing a vice president. We're not lambasting her or anything like that. You're just questioning whether or not that was the wisest environment for her to be in. That's all.
And I think overwhelmingly, the consensus was it was absolutely positively the right thing to do. And no matter what she does, we know she has faced more criticism, more attacks around her race. You mentioned the NABJ conference, more attacks around her gender as a woman. The attacks against her have been the most intense that we've ever seen, and they've predominantly been sexist and racist attacks. And I'm like the millions of people that were sitting there cheering for the vice president because representation matters. And the point of having a Black woman run on the ticket, at the top of the ticket, is so that women like Megan can be seen and can be heard. And we don't have to hide who we are. We can be our authentic selves, even at the highest level of government. A lot of irons in the fire. So like, what's motivating you in this moment? You got this best-selling book that's out as well. You don't sleep, I take it.
I sleep, but I'm an ambitious individual. I work very hard, and I just want to be one of the best ever at what I choose to do. And doing First Take, I've been very blessed and fortunate enough with the help of all the contributors that I have on the show, my host, Molly Karam, the producers behind the scene, et cetera, to be the #1 show over the last 12 years in the morning. And, in terms of a sports media talent, in terms of ratings and revenue, I've been #1 as well. So I've been very blessed in that regard. But to do that limits me, not just in terms of what I'm doing, but keeps me at the mercy of one particular employer. And so that's not something that I aspire to have for my life as I move forward. When I think about, spreading my wings and putting my talents on display, I give major props to the athletes, rap artists, musicians, actors and actresses and stuff like that. The things that they do, I think that we look at their talent, and what we don't appreciate enough is the tremendous courage that they put forth, because it takes a lot of courage to believe in yourself and to go for it without that security blanket. And I've always positioned myself to have somewhat of a security blanket before I had the courage to move out and move forward. And so I just look at it from that standpoint. I just got to a point, I'm 56 years old. I've accomplished a lot in my sports career. And I just got to a point where I said, I'm not going to be one that looks back and says, I wish I had done this or I wish I had done that. Let's find out who I am. Let's find out what I'm worth. Let's find out what I bring to the table, what I have the capabilities to bring it to the table. And from the moment I did that, I guest hosted Jimmy Kimmel. I have a recurring role on General Hospital. It is true, I can't elaborate specifically as of yet because I'm not allowed to, but I did have a script picked up, a scripted content, a drama series that I've created that has been picked up, and the announcement will be coming in a few weeks. I'm in contract negotiations with ESPN, which everybody and their grandmother knows about. And then on top of it all, I still have aspirations, whether it's late night, whether it's a political show on CNN, MSNBC, ABC, Fox. I don't give a damn where it is. I mean, for me personally, it's just being able to put my abilities on display and showing what kind of capabilities I really have. And I just don't want to be boxed in. I don't want somebody looking at me and saying, that's who you are and that's all you are. Because the true success stories that exist in this world don't equate to that. Kevin Hart is not just a comedian. Dwayne Rock Johnson is not just a wrestler. The list goes on and on about people, even LeBron James, who's an incredible role model, not just a basketball player, but a businessman, an actor, a content creator, etc. And so you look at all of these things and it's like, don't hate, emulate as best as you possibly can and do what you do best. And that's what I've been trying to do.
Sounds incredible. And when I think about all the things you just articulated, they're similar, but yet they can be very different things. So hosting a late night show, recurring role in General Hospital puts you in front of the camera versus, writing or producing a scripted project that puts you behind the camera. So if you had your druthers, is the future for Stephen A. Smith in front of the camera, more shows where you are using your voice, lifting your voice, telling your stories, interviewing people? Or is it you behind the cameras being that, that producer, producing content, whether it's scripted, unscripted, Stephen A. Spielberg, maybe?
I honestly have.
Thanks, Robert, for that.
I'm not dodging the question, but I honestly have to say both, because being in front of the camera, I'm a voice. And it's always been paramount to me to be a voice, to be somebody that can provoke and create change potentially with the sound of my voice and the things that I articulated. But behind the camera is not just about the money, it's about the power that it wields. You have a lot of people. I think about Spike Lee. I think about Tyler Perry. I think about the great Will Packer. I think about my buddy Antoine Fuqua. I think about Jerry Bruckheimer and Dick Wolf and folks like that. And, I think that I have the potential to pull off something where I'm able to create content, and ultimately people will gravitate to that, because I've been in television for a long time. And being in television, I think I have an idea about what people like to see, what people want to see, and the kind of things that will resonate from a rating standpoint or what have you, in terms of what I can help create to bring to the table, especially if you have the right team around you. And so I think about all of those things, and me acting and stuff like that. I'm no actor. I just have fun doing it because I was watching General Hospital since I was 8 years old. So I can't call myself an actor, but they think I can act. So I'm happy about that. It's something that
they invite you back and you accept the invitation.